Well, hello everyone, and welcome to yet another episode of Chatting with the Experts, the TV show where I speak with women from Africa and the Caribbean and in the diaspora who are successful entrepreneurs and professionals. They share with me a mission, and what's that mission? The mission is to educate, empower, and to inspire women globally through their products or their services. Today is a little different in that in this episode, I am going to have with me my co host and one of the dynamic speakers of my upcoming summit, which is called Empowered to Excel Virtual Women's Summit. When is that? That is on Friday, this coming Friday and Saturday. That is May 30th and 31st from 9 a.m. through 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And it's a 2-day virtual summit for women entrepreneurs, for professionals, for leaders who are focused on actionable strategies in business, in leadership, in finance, marketing, and wellness. So without much ado, I will invite my co-host, another dynamic speaker, Turiya Hodge, to join us, and also Dr. Nadia Brown, who is one of the speakers on Friday. Thank you so much, both of you, for joining us.
Awesome. Welcome. Thank you so much, Paula, for the invite to sit down with your audience and chatting with the experts. I am once again Turiya Hodge, social media strategist, and I am super excited for the Empower to Excel 2-day virtual summit. And one of the things I'd like to do is congratulate you once again for being obedient to the vision. And so when I take a look at your work and what you do in bringing women, all women of color, all throughout the diaspora together, and to have a conversation on what it means to be business leaders in our respected professions, and just bringing everybody, together to share what they have to offer, so we could all, do this thing called life, do this thing called business in a way that it benefits us all, not just us, but the people that we are purposed to serve. So thank you so much for that, Paula.
Absolutely. I couldn't have done this without you and all the other speakers who said yes to being on the summit. And so today I'm going to let Dr. Nadia Brown introduce herself. She is one of our dynamic speakers. I'm so excited. So Dr. Nadia, would you mind telling those who have joined us who you are, what you do, and what you are going to be sharing with them on the summit?
Yeah, so I'm Dr. Nadia Brown. I'm the founder of the Doyen Agency, and Doyen means Standout Woman Leader. So I'm a leadership and sales strategist. And on Friday, I get to share my message, if you will. My training will be Lead with Confidence, Earn with Courage. A lot of times, we as women are afraid to talk about the money, whether you're in corporate and is negotiating your salary or a raise, or you're a business owner and it's making sure your rates are at a good place and making sales and generating revenue. Either way, this is going to be a dynamic session for you.
Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you. So, one reason that I decided to do this is because, well, first and foremost, I've always wanted to do a summit, but my story has always been one of podcast coach, encourager of women, empowering women. But I thought the summit would just be an ideal way to bring together even more women to hear oh my gosh, the voices of the professionals that I don't always have an opportunity to have a one-on-one show with, but we'll have it now, the platform to speak with women globally about what it is that they're experts at, how things have impacted their life, and even more so for business owners, women business owners, because that's something that, we don't always have the opportunity to experience. So what are we going to be teaching on or sharing that day? I mean, what do people expect to learn from this? Turiya, do you want to answer that?
Yeah, and before I answer it, I just want to give a shout out to Dr. Nadia, because as I was sitting here and I'm super excited, to listen to her message. And I have to just share, I've had the opportunity to work with Dr. Nadia several years, but one of my fondest memories, and she talks about selling with courage, is that I actually had Dr. Nadia work with me on my sales script and my sales training. And I
Oh.
still have it, Dr. Nadia. I
Wow.
still do. Okay. And I remember the very first time implementing that sales training along with the sales script. I got my script right in front of me. I'm on the call. And then inside of the script, Dr. Nadia actually has, after you ask the question, pause. Wait for the answer. She actually wrote those things in there. And I remember going through the script on this one particular call, and I gave my price, the investment. And right underneath that, Dr. Nadia says, pause. And when I tell you that pause seemed like an eternity, but I was like, no, I'm going to remember the training that Dr. Nadia taught me. She taught me to pause. And as I paused, it's like it felt like an eternity. But the lady turned around and she says, oh, okay, I'll be able to do that. And I was just like, wow, if that pause was not there, I would have probably talked myself
Mhm.
out of the sale. So as I'm sitting here, Dr. Nadia, that's one of my fondest memories of you and the work, that you do. And so I'm super excited that you're going to be part, of the summit. And I can't wait to hear, what other gems that you're going to drop on the summit as well. And so along with Dr. Nadia, Paula, and myself, we have amazing speakers like Susan Hart. And Susan Hart, her talk is going to be leadership mastery, navigating challenges and inspiring teams. Like, how do you do that? And how do you do that in times as these? And so a lot of us are faced with different challenges, whether you're here in the US, you're in Canada, or even globally, times are changing. So what does it mean, to navigate leadership, navigate teams in spite of all of the different changes that we have going on? Then we have Dr. Lynette Monte. And when I tell you Dr. Lynette Monte, I always say be prepared when she takes the stage, because she does some stepping on some toes. She is one of the straight up no nonsense business coaches out there. And so she's going to talk about your $1 million bottleneck, and time is not your problem. Your authority is. So I can't wait to hear her message on that. And then we have none other than the Dekeisha Williams, the webinar queen. She's going to talk about how to attract your ideal clients using webinars. Then we have Dr. Gloria Sloan, who's also going to be gracing us, and she's going to be talking about storytelling for success. So, what it means to share your journey, to build emotional connections along with others. And so, when I tell you we have an action packed 2-day summit, come prepared. Bring your notebook. Come ready to learn. Take notes. Invite a business bestie along with you, because I'm going to tell you these are all of the challenges that we see as entrepreneurs, we see as business leaders, and it's how do you navigate it. So we've put together a team of experts to help answer some of those burning questions and provide strategies that would allow us to move forward.
Thank you so much, Turiya, for expanding on that. And I know we have a lot more speakers we can elaborate on what they do and what expertise they're going to be sharing. But I want to come back to Dr. Nadia Brown. When I read her bio, wow, you mentioned just now how helpful she was in helping you craft your message. And when I read her bio, and Dr. Nadia Brown, you're right here, and I'm talking to you in the third person because it was so impressive that you are a sales strategist, but you have a background in engineering and a doctorate in organizational leadership. But one thing that drove you to being successful and for starting your agency was around your own fears about sales and success. And now you're able to teach people how to lead with confidence and to sell with their heart. Tell us a little bit more about that, because that always resonates with a lot of us business owners. We step into this and we're like, oh, I'm so afraid. Like for me, let me give you an example. I was afraid of public speaking. And here I am 13 years later in front of the camera on a podcast, audio podcast first, and then video podcast. But it came from my own pain. It came from my own uncertainties. It came from my own saying, oh, I want to do this, but I'm afraid. So tell us a bit about you.
Yeah, so I think I'm probably in the majority. Most women start their businesses because we're excited or passionate about a particular population or particular topic. And so when I first started my business, I was really focused on helping women leaders, primarily those who had been in or who worked in male dominant industries because that's where I'd come from, right? And one of the things that I quickly realized though that as a business owner, I needed to learn how to sell. However, I didn't like the way I'd been taught to sell or the ways that I had seen sales demonstrated throughout my life and just different interactions. So it made it very difficult to be very passionate about helping these women, but not knowing how to engage with them in a way that allowed me to truly serve them. So that was part of my own journey was how do I sell in a way that feels not only in alignment, but also within my values and it feels like I'm operating in integrity. Because I find it very interesting that sometimes you're taught that you're going to work with someone, you almost bully them to work with you, and then you want to then build this close working relationship and you're wondering why it's not working. Well, the way things started were a hot mess. So I had to figure out a way that I could engage with people that I wanted to work with, but we could start off on good terms, not feel like I go into this conversation to do battle. And so when I meet women and they're like, well, I don't like sales because I feel like I have to convince people to work with me. I'm like, that's not at all what you get to do when you're having a sales conversation. It's actually an invitation to support them and help them achieve a goal that you have the ability to help them solve, right? And so then it's like, oh, wait, that whole reframing of it. Or like when Turiya talks about the sales script, which I shifted because a lot of times we don't like scripts. So you'll hear me often refer to those as conversation guides. You're having a conversation with someone, and but you also have this tool to help guide the conversation because you're going somewhere, right? And so how do you do that in such a way? But part of the reason why she has that pause there or silence is because what do? When we get uncomfortable, we talk ourselves out of it. So she had the opportunity where she stated that investment and there were stories going through her head. Am I right, Turiya?
Oh,
Right?
yes.
Your things going through your head. And I'm like, don't let the stories drive the conversation. And when she did that, then the person that she invited to work with her said yes. And so it's all those different things, but a lot of it is that mental piece. How do we do this in a way that allows me to show up as me? When you get to know me, I love to have fun. I love to giggle. Turiya tell you we laughing all the time. That's how, if you were to have a sales conversation with me, that's likely what it would be like. And that's who you get to work with if you say yes to working with me. It's not like that whole bait and switch. Oh, I thought you were one way and now I work with you and you're a different way. And so those are the things that I get to work with women on. And then even if you're in corporate, because I know we have a blend of women attending the summit, I can't remember the stats. I need to look it up before Friday. I'll get some new data. But the stats in terms of the number of women who negotiate their salaries is terrible. And I knew this stat and I still had trouble asking for what I knew that I should be making. I had the data. I knew the salary range. I knew this, I knew that. And still, when that moment presented itself, I hesitated. Why do we do that? Like, what is that fear about? So that's what I get to talk about because it's a real thing that even people like myself, we have the data, we've done the research. I did a whole dissertation on women in leadership. Like, I get it. And still, when it's time for the rubber to meet the road and you to really stand in that, you still sometimes may start sweating, your voice may start shaking, like it's a real thing. And so, how do we move past that fear that we have around money and really standing in our power and demanding and commanding what it is that we know that we bring, the value we bring to an organization, whether we're working in a corporate organization or we're leading our own?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely amazing. Thank you for bringing that back, Dr. Nadia, that it's not a sales script, it's a conversation guide. And I'll share with you like how far your influence has ran for me, because one of the things, like you said, is being able to show up in a way around that conversation to invite people to journey along with you, you journey along with them to achieve the desired goal. And so, of course, I'm in the social media space. And one of the things that I take a look at is like, what does it look like? And so a lot of times is just a reframe. And one of the reframes that, I had the opportunity to make in that vein, instead of saying content, I now use connecting conversations. So what are your connecting conversations that you're having out there in the marketplace with the people that you're purposed to serve? So thank you so much for that. Yeah.
You're welcome. That's juicy. I like that.
Yeah, I'll be sharing more of that on Friday. So I'm actually going to be talking about social selling mastery and like, what does it mean in these day and times, So, yeah.
Well, it's interesting coming back to what Turiya, you said, Dr. Nadia helped you do, which was pause, silence, pausing before we do the next step, because I'm hearing a lot of that from people. It's interesting that more so this week, about the power of silence, pregnant silence. How many times, we talk ourselves out of or talk ourselves into things because we haven't just paused. And so I want to pause right now and ask any members who have joined us, of the audience, if any of them can relate to this, when there's been a time in their life where they've had to pause before they made a decision and how that has impacted them. Is there anyone who's willing to share or ask a question about that? About the pause?
I use the pause quite a bit when I'm talking to clients. And also, I have to say, I use it a lot in my personal life. When I'm talking to friends or even with my sisters, especially when we get to I'll just tell you when, it may be contentious with my sisters and I'm very close with them. But one of them will say something that I will immediately interpret as negative. And I've learned to just have her say more. Sometimes it's just a matter of say more about that, and then she will go on to explain exactly, what her intent was in whatever it is she said or what the real meaning was. Sometimes we just misspeak. And I find that when we take a pause and calm ourselves, kind of calm my system down, there's a much better ending to the conversation for me and for the other person. For me, because I didn't jump to conclusions and, walk away. You know how you walk away and you have the imaginary conversation? Like, I should have said this. And you know what? I should have laid her out. You know what I mean? So I don't have those internal imaginary conversations. Whatever the confusion is, isn't lingering on in my mind and in my spirit. And so, how it just leads to a whole lot of other things. It's not just what they said, it's the effect of what they said. So pause has worked very effectively for me. And I think the hardest thing people struggle with is they think a pause means it has to be like 5 or 10 minutes. Right? A pause, sometimes a pause is just, 30 seconds.
So right. 5 or 10 or 15 minutes, when a few seconds can be just as impactful. Because I remember I had a guest on the show and she talked about a negotiation that she had to do with a potential employer and how, she was about to say yes. And then she paused and thought it through and then she negotiated. And she said it was when she paused that she could think through, wait a minute, I may have some other options. Why not put those options on the table? And if memory serves me well, she walked away with much more than she would have had, in terms of her salary, than if she had just said outright yes without that pause. So, yeah, that 5 to 10 seconds pause can really change a lot of things.
Yeah.
Dr. Nadia, I see you nodding your head.
It really can. I think that, not being afraid to pause, and to Constance's point, sometimes it doesn't take all that. Like, it doesn't take a long time. It was, 30-second pause compared to a 5-minute pause. But even in that 30 seconds, it gives you that moment to, like she said, calm yourself, quiet any of the doubts, the insecurities, to really kind of bring you back. And like in your example, Paula, it was like, oh, wait, I may have some options. And sometimes the easiest thing to even do that, to buy you some more time, is to ask a question. Do some more probing, some digging, like, tell me more about this. And have you thought about that? Or what about this? And then as that person is talking, you gather yourself. So then you don't have to have the walk away conversation, because not all of us think of all the things right in the moment. I'm that person too, Constance. I walk away, or I wake up in the middle of the night. That's usually my worst one. I
Absolutely.
wake up at 1:30 a.m. and then I have the greatest comeback ever. But of course, everyone else is asleep. So, learning those different tools and tricks to, one, pause, take a deep breath, and then also ask more questions sometimes, to give you a moment to not only gather more information, but to also just give you a second to kind of get your bearings and to kind of think through what it is that you want to ask for, what you want to say, before you just outright say yes. And I think sometimes as women, we've been conditioned, a lot of us, that you just say yes. Even when you want to say no, even when you know it's a no or it's not a right fit, we've been taught to override that gut feeling and just say yes, to be agreeable or to keep the peace, or whatever the reason is. But I'm glad more of us are taking that pause. We're learning boundaries. We're also learning what we will and what we won't stand for. And we're training, our daughters now to make different choices. So I'm excited about that.
I love that.
I think back also that the pause gives you leverage.
Mhm.
I just remember my days in corporate when something was thrown out, especially in negotiations, and you just look at the person, and then they feel a little, oh, you look at the person with that, that's BS, right? It's almost like what your mom did when you were growing up. You'd say something and she'd look over at you and you'd know, okay, that was the line and I need to back away from it.
The look.
The
The
look.
look. Oh, yeah, we all know that look.
That look.
And
It
that's
is.
all it took. That's all it took. And it made you, you got the look and they didn't say anything. And you started doing a whole lot of rambling.
Hmm.
Right?
Yep. My husband and I were watching a show recently. I can't think of the name of it. And it was an investigator. And it was so funny because she did exactly that, Constance. She would sit there and she would ask a question, or sometimes she wouldn't ask a question of the person who was a potential suspect. And she would just sit there and look at them. And it would get so awkward. And then they would just start telling, and they would say stuff. And they're like, I know what you're thinking. And I'm like, do you? Because she said nothing. And then they would start talking, and then she would say nothing. She just really mastered the power to pause. And then they would pause. And if she didn't say anything, they would just keep going. And so she got so much information out of them just by pausing and being quiet. So, yeah, definitely a powerful tool.
Yeah. And I want to add to that because I just saw, is it Ade? Am I pronouncing it
Ade,
correctly?
yes.
So we're thinking along the same lines, and we're talking about sales. So I love, Dr. Nadia, that you opened up the conversation in sharing that as we position to work with others, whether it's in our business or we're in companies, that we actually get to invite other people to who we are. So we shouldn't be out there pretending to be other than we're not. And as we're talking about this conversation about pausing, one of the things that came up for me, and I don't know if this is the same thing that Ade was thinking, but this is what I was thinking. So sometimes we could be so much like on our own agenda in our mind, like when we sit down to have these conversations and we know that we're going to say this, we're going to say this, and we're going to ask this question, and then this is going to follow up next. And so sometimes we could be so anchored into what it is like we think is the outcome versus just creating the space, the pause to have other people fill in what they're thinking and where they're at. And so we're talking about pausing, and it's reminding me of just Monday, I had the opportunity to spend some time with a client. And I went to the client and I had my agenda in my mind, right? And it wasn't until I unpacked this that I realized what was happening. So I had my agenda. in my mind what I want to accomplish, what the outcome is going to be, how we're going to get to the outcome, all of this stuff, because I'm prepared, right? And then I got there, and then it wasn't going the way how I anticipated going in my mind. And in right there, I had to once again incorporate the power of the pause, to let the space be open, to have that person tell me exactly where they are, what is it that they need at the moment to move forward to the next step. So sometimes the pauses can be, like you said, like the 30-second pause, or sometimes the pause can just be, a few hours to give people just the opportunity to work things through in their mind. So I love it that we're talking about creating the space, not just for them to give a response in a short time, but for them to really unpack things for themselves too. And so sometimes it might not be a response, it might just be a question, from them. And how well are we able to hold that for them? And then lean into not just what we want the outcome to be, but what would be the best thing to help serve them. So that's what came up for me in the power of the pause.
That's so powerful. That's so powerful. And that goes back to what Ade has here in the chat, that the power of listening is very important. I always say, there's a reason why we have two ears and one mouth, so that we can listen a lot more than we can speak. Because once those words go out of our mouth, we can't take them back. They're out there. And now that we live in a world where, nearly everything is being recorded. I'm a podcast coach, so I encourage people to record. And then, of course, we've got video where it's being visually recorded. You can't take it back. You can apologize. You can say sorry. You can try and take it back, but it's out there forever these days, where data is so, is stored everywhere. So yeah, that story you gave, and then of course Dr. Nadia talking about the power of the pause, is priceless. We need, as sales personnel, as entrepreneurs, to know the importance of that silence when speaking to our clients. Let us find out what they want and not what we think they need or think they want. Sometimes it's so different.
Yes.
So different. So again, I'm going to open up the floor to anyone else who may have a question or a comment as on what we have spoken about so far, because this is, in a sense, is giving you a glimpse as to how our summit is going to be, the conversations we're going to have. It's really going to be impactful for women entrepreneurs, women professionals, whether you're in leadership, you're in coaching, you're in sales, whatever walk of life, or even if you are not in any of those things, but you want to just better yourself. Because I know for myself, I learn something new every single day, no matter how small it is. And I cherish it because it means it's something that I didn't know before. And now I've added that to my knowledge bank. So again, I'm going to pause, that's the keyword today, and ask any of the audience members if they would like to, contribute to this conversation that we're having right now. And you don't need to switch on your mic, your camera, if you're not comfortable with that. And you don't even need to switch on your mic. You can just type, put it in the chat, and we'll address it. All right. Doesn't seem like we have.
Well, Constance is up.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Constance.
Constance, go ahead.
I was really intrigued with how you turned the sales conversation around, because I have to say that's probably my weakest point. I have a script in front of me and we go through like, what's your problem? And, what have you tried? And all of those things. But I don't, I get down to the point where they want to know about pricing, and I've stalled long enough. And stalled probably isn't the right word. I mean, I've gone over the why do it and, all of that kind of thing. But really, it comes down to, I feel people are like, I don't know what to say. I feel like I'm not weeding them out early enough, right? And I'm going through this whole spiel, and it comes down to money, which to me says they weren't at the point where they could make a decision,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And they were wasting my time. I'm being very blunt with you guys. Like, I would never say this. I would never use those words, but that's truly how I feel. I feel like,
Mm-hmm.
I've invested the 20 minutes or whatever, and I realize that people need to shop around. But I take myself, for example, if I'm going to buy something, I've already done the research, I've already tested you out, and I've tested you out, and I've gone to your site a gazillion times, and I've had my sisters go to your site. You know what I mean? I did all the camouflage. So by the time I talk to you, I know that I'm going to sign you up. But I feel like what's frustrating for me is I think people want a coaching session
Mm-hmm.
and not a relationship. Does that make sense?
Yep. So
And
a couple, oh, go ahead. I want you to finish.
you let me fit. So I was just intrigued about how you turn it into a conversation and you don't feel cheated at the end, regardless of the outcome. Like I've said to myself, divorce yourself from the outcome. I've tried that strategy. I've tried just kind of give them a little bit of coaching and then circle back around. And so there I am. I think that's enough for you to work with, right?
Oh my gosh. So this is good and it's common. It is common.
Okay.
So first I want to acknowledge that you are human and no matter how many times we may say it's just business, it's not personal, it feels personal, right?
Yes.
Like it
Yes.
just is what it
Yes.
is. And we just
Yes.
have to figure out how to work through that, how to
Yes.
acknowledge our feelings. One of the resources I created, I'll be sure to have one with me on Friday for show and tell, is the Courage Diary. And it's a resource that allows you to not only track your sales conversations, but one of the questions that I put in there during your post call debrief is what emotions came up for you? Those are important. We are emotional people. Let's just acknowledge it and embrace it. That is part of our superpower, but it
Yes.
can
Yes.
also be our kryptonite if we're not careful. So I just first wanted to start there because I get it. And as much as I do sales, I still have my days when I'm like, oh, that sucked. Like that was just really hard and it hurt. And I'm like, okay, Nadia,
Mhm.
what's going on? But also, how do I take care of myself so that
Mhm.
I don't allow myself to stay in that place? But I
Mhm.
also don't beat myself up for going to that place because I'm human just like everyone else. And there are some days where it just rolls off my back and I'm like, next. And there are other days when I'm like, oh, everything just felt personal today. I don't know what's going on, but it feels personal. So I wanted to start there because we're all human and there's nothing wrong with having feelings or emotions about doing sales. And
Mhm.
part of sales that makes it so hard is you will get rejected. People will say no, no matter how great you think they are, no matter how much you can help them, no matter how cheap it is. You're like, oh my gosh, like I can't go even lower. Like it's none of that. Somebody is going to say no and it's going to hurt. Like that's just part of the process. So I wanted to start there. The other thing,
Okay.
Constance, really quick though, is I don't know your business. So I'm just throw out a bunch of things and grab what may work and discard the rest. So one is before people get on a call with you, if you don't already, look at implementing some sort of form that allows you to gather information, but it also allows you to do some level setting. So there's some strategic ways that you can do that in terms of just people don't just get to go straight to your calendar. They have to take an extra step. And doesn't
Yeah.
have to be complicated, but it is a way to help get rid of some of your tire kickers.
Yes.
Because
Yes.
I'm
That's
just
an
here.
excellent idea
Yes.
because
So
I've
and so
noticed that I have had to do that.
mhm,
It's like, wait a minute, do you have a budget for this?
mhm.
Where are you in the oh, that's an excellent, and I don't know why I do it. I do it as a consumer, but I didn't think to do it as a business owner.
Yes. So
Yes.
that's one. And then two, either probably both places in the form and in the questions that you're asking. Some of the questions you ask are vetting questions. Is this someone I even want to work with? So it's
Hmm.
not just focused on the solution, that's part of it, But another part is I'm interviewing this person. Like, are you going to give me and or my team a hard time and you're going to be that client and none of us want to be bothered with? So part of it is they're vetting you. That's an interview, but it goes both ways. It's kind of like a first date. Do I like you? Because I don't know, if I don't like you, then I get to turn you down. Another thing is during that conversation, when you start, and Turiya can attest to this, before we even start the conversation, you set the tone. So the reason that we're gathered here today is because we're having a conversation about us working together, right? Like that's the essence of that. So I'm not here to do free coaching. I'm not here to do consulting. I'm not, whatever it is you thought we might be here to do, that's not it. This is why we're here, and level setting so that people understand that this is the purpose of this conversation. And the goal is by the end of this conversation to see if we're a match. So those are just a couple things. One thing I will add, because you talked about our buying styles are very similar, so I get it. However, not everyone buys the same. So there are different buying styles. Like my husband is very different. He's going to do all the research and go to the website and talk to you and still need to sleep on it. It's a legitimate part of his process. But once that brother buys, he's like one of your most loyal customers. So it's just one of those things. So how do you adjust your process to accommodate the different buying styles? Because not everyone is there kicking tires, but there are things you can do to kind of weed those folks out.
Thank you. Those are really good suggestions, and I'm going to implement them because I think that will really help my mindset as I go into conversations, and it will help the outcome as well, I believe. So thank you.
Yep.
I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Oh, and I want to chime in.
Go ahead, girl.
Just want to say you need to, because after all, you are the
Oh.
social selling master. Mistress, mastery is the word, but still, because, so yeah.
Yeah.
So go on about that, please.
Once again, Constance, I'm going to applaud you for your transparency. So not everyone would be willing to share the emotions that come up and be honest about what it is that they feel when we are in these positions, when we are doing these calls. We're asking people, like, this is my word, asking people to journey, with us. As you could tell, like, nothing about me is a hard, pushy salesperson, right? But one of the things that you said that I found was so interesting is that you said, I've already done my research. And to Dr. Nadia's point, I wrote that down, like, not everyone does that type of research, or you never know, they're still doing their research. And part of their research is being on that call with you. And so I don't know what space you're in, but I work a lot with coaches and consultants. That's my niche. And one of the things that stood out for me is, oh my gosh, how do we tell where people are in the buyer's journey, in their journey? So a lot of times we know what, our journey looks like. We know what we want them to do. We know where we're leading them to and all of that good stuff. But the question is, how well are we able to assess like where they are in their journey? And so one of the stats that I found was very interesting, and I heard this a couple months ago, is that it takes for someone to consume 7 hours of content, 11 touch points across 4 platforms before you're able to convert that person who's just a prospect, that person who's interested, into a paying client or paying customer. Okay. And when I heard that stat, that changed the way how I look at things, because people are doing their research. And so the question becomes, how well are we able to put in front of them the things that they need to allow them to make that buying decision? And so when I take a look at social media, this is why I talk about social selling, like it's a whole entire process and we get a chance to use social media as the wonderful tool that it is to do all of this research, to do all of the listening, to provide the touch points, to take people along, the journey. So ultimately, by time, we're in the conversation because I get it, Constance, like that's your time right there. And you want to make sure that you give you and that person the best opportunity to move forward when you're in that conversation. So it's all about what are the other things that they get a chance to experience before they get on that call with you. So when you're on that call, it doesn't turn out to be an investigative call where they're trying to vet you because that's what people are doing, right? Just like how we're vetting them, they're vetting us. They're like, well, how do I know? Like they say that they're going to do what it is they say that they're going to do or they can do. So it's how do we create that environment beforehand so when we get on the call, we have the best possible outcomes for everyone. So I love that. I just wanted to commend you on your honesty and your transparency for bringing that to the call.
Well,
So good.
thank you for breaking down that, for both of you, it's alerting me to the fact that everybody doesn't buy the way I buy. And I appreciate that because I'm thinking you're me, that client is me. So I appreciate that. Yeah. I've gotten away from the sting of rejection, but I think that I've gone too far in the other direction. I kind of like come to the call, like kind of you realize that they may not buy your services, and that's okay. Especially when we get to the money. Like I'm really sensitive about that because what I've found is that the people who hire me don't even hear my price, right? They don't hear that. What they hear is, you can help me, and whatever that cost is, I'm buying it. It's like those shoes at Nordstrom's. I can't afford those shoes, but I'm buying them, right? I want you guys to speak on this when it comes to like asking for your worth. Like I'm firm on that now, but that's a sensitive, that's a tough hurdle to jump over.
Yeah. So
Yes.
first, I want to add a reframe. Well, really quickly before I dive into that, Constance, I just wanted to add to Turiya's data. And I just got this today, so it's fresh. Remember that only 3% of your target market is actually ready to buy now.
Ready. Right.
Wow.
That's only 3%.
There's a
3%.
whole nother 97,
Yes,
97%
exactly. That
that
are
needs
different
work.
stages,
A
right?
time.
Only
Oh
3%
my gosh.
are ready to
That's
buy right this second. So that really
right.
starts to reframe. And again, going to Turiya, that's why the content you put out, the marketing and all of that helps those others work through their process. Only
Yes.
3% are ready to buy right this second.
Wow. 3%.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Isn't that scary? Isn't that,
Yes. Yes.
I don't
So
want to say
again, it helps
worrisome.
to reframe even, and I get it. You have those conversations, you want people to be ready. That's why the work that Turiya does is so important because all of that really is
Mhm.
part of the sales process. It's not just that
Mhm.
conversation. So all the things that you're doing prior to that help
Mhm.
impact the results or the outcome of
Right.
that. So yeah. But to your
Wow.
money question, one of the things that I want to say is we talk a lot about charging what we're worth and that whole money thing, but I want us to remember and write this down if you must, that we can never charge what we are worth. We are priceless. We can
I
never
love it.
charge
Say it
enough.
again.
We can never charge enough. We
Oh,
can't do that. So we have to learn to separate
Yes.
our self-worth from the work that we
Mhm.
do. Now,
Yeah.
I know that that is easier said than done. So that's why I want you to write it down and repeat it as many times as you need to till it hits your soul.
Taking it
I
down.
can never charge what I am worth because I am priceless.
Yes.
So then that leaves, how do I communicate the value of the work that I do and the impact that it has on my clients so that they understand that value, and then
Mhm.
the investment to work with me is a no-brainer, right? Those are two different conversations. My
Right.
worth, you can never charge enough for me,
Right.
but I do bring this value to the table, and the work that I do has this impact. So think about how your client's different. How does that ripple effect happen? Because a lot of times we not only take what we learn, but then we share that with others, whether it's our children, our families. Like, I don't know the work that you do, but I know that there is some sort of ripple effect that happens even from you working with a single client. So start looking at how are people different? What are all the different ways that they are different? And start to tie that back into the value that your products and services provide to them. But that is separate from Constance.
That's excellent. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Is indeed
Excellent.
excellent. And going back to our keyword, we are going to have to pause probably till Friday. But before we pause, to continue on Friday, May 30th and Saturday, May 31st, I want to still give the audience, we have had some great interaction with Constance, but I'm just wondering if there's anyone else in the audience who may have a question before we do that longer pause till Friday. Yes, no?
I love it.
All right. So Constance, thank you so much for all those questions you asked. They are indeed priceless. I love what we heard from Dr. Nadia. We can never charge enough as business owners for what we are worth because we are priceless. But there's a difference between the value you bring and our worth. We need to understand that. And, I, as a podcast coach, tell that to my clients all the time who are like, how can I start a podcast? What will I speak about? And I always say to them, think about your value. Think about what you are bringing to the table. Think about the conversation that you can have. Like this in itself is a podcast. We've spoken about things that are valuable to each one of us here and the audience. And so as a podcast coach, one of the things I tell my clients is to embrace authenticity and imperfection because people want to hear that. They don't want you to be too scripted. They don't want you to sound like you have the answer to everything because then why will they listen to you? They listen to you to feel that, oh, there's someone who understands me, but I can learn something from. They listen to you because you're bringing them a service that probably they've been looking for and they haven't been able to find. They listen to you because they can relate to you. They can identify with you. And so as a podcast coach, my session on now is going to be Saturday because we had to make a change is the power of storytelling, communicating your value with impact. Impact is important, but your value is even more so because people always do business with those, and Turiya always finishes this off for me because I always get it wrong, to those who they like and who they feel comfortable with. There's a business phrase, Turiya,
They know, like, and trust.
That's it. I knew you would do it for me. Do business with people who they know, like, and trust. That's a big part, a very big part. So before we close off today, again, I want to thank all of those who joined. And also, the reason that we came on today is to encourage people, those listening, because we're going to put this out, to join us on Friday and Saturday. That's May 30th and 31st from 9 a.m. till 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for the Empowered to Excel Virtual Summit, which is a 2-day virtual event for women entrepreneurs. Men can join us too. Don't feel that we are excluding you, but we only say women because there are more of us women here, right? So it's for women entrepreneurs, for professionals and leaders who are focused on actionable strategies in business, leadership, finance, marketing, and wellness. And Dr. Nadia Brown joined us today so you could get a taste of what to expect on Friday and Saturday. We have so many speakers. I mean, the 3 of us here, because each one of us here is going to be speaking, but there are 11 more who will be speaking on either Friday or Saturday. So please join us to have as invigorating, exciting, and empowering conversations like you had today. We are going to drop the link in the chat for those of you who are here with us.
It's already there. Gotcha.
Oh, you've already dropped it in. All right. And also, have you dropped in for those who can't attend, who are listening or who are in the audience and who are saying, oh my gosh, this is going to be so valuable, but I can't be there. We also have a VIP package. Turiya, have you dropped that in the chat?
Oh, I'm going to do it right now. I got it.
And this gives you lifetime access to all the recordings, the workbooks, and access to the speakers. And she's about to drop that in the chat. Oops, it's 2 o'clock already. So for those of you, again, I'm pausing. In the audience, is there a parting word? Is there a question that you've been burning to ask, but you just haven't had a chance or haven't felt the courage? Because I know, coming from a background where I was petrified of public speaking, and sometimes I still get nervous, giving you an opportunity to ask a question related to the summit, and if not related to the summit, related to life, that we can address, of course. Don't ask any medical questions, please. Anybody? Okay, I see the 3. Okay, these are what you have put in here. Okay, Ade, you say thank you for so much the knowledge. This knowledge is relevant in all aspects of our lives and business. These techniques are very helpful. Thank you. You said you've definitely learned a lot from this session and I'm looking forward to the summit lesson. Thank you, Ade. We are looking forward to you joining us. And please invite as many people as possible because, you know, as I said, I learn something new every day and I'm sure everyone else does. I'm not that different, am I? So thank you. Dr. Nadia, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
So happy you joined. I'm so excited about Friday, your talk on Friday. And Turiya, the social seller mastery person, expert. Thank you for being my co-host on this summit. I couldn't have done it.
Awesome. You're welcome.
Thank you. So if there are no more questions, shall we say bye?
For now, it's just a pause.
Yes, it's just a pause. A pause till Friday and Saturday.
Yes. Till we meet again.
Till we meet again. Thank you.
Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, Constance. We'll see you Friday and Saturday.
Yes, take care.
All right.
Have I left out anything, Turiya? Anything else you wanted to add?
Oh, no, just like you said, make sure to register, grab your VIP all access pass, because I'm pretty sure I could stake on it. We have some amazing women. They're all givers. So the resources and everything will be boundless. So these are things that you could not just take away for the 2 days, but you could implement as time goes on. I'm pretty sure that we'll all be able to call on the resources that will be shared over the 2 days of the summit. So make sure you register, make sure you tell your friends, your colleagues, your business besties, get them on here because it's going to be life altering.
It will be. Thank you again, everyone. And bye for now, till Friday.
Till Friday. See you
Till
Friday.
Friday. Bye-bye.
Bye.